Hey, what's up, guys? It's Foster from English no Cru. As you probably know, we are taking a temporary break from our normal routine because we are currently focusing more of our time and attention on our pronunciation and conversation course called Sound School. So, Sound School is an unconventional course that we created specifically for listeners of this show. So, if you're serious about speaking real, confident, conversational English, you should check it out while we are still open for new students. In the meantime, we have something new for you. We are calling it English no Cru Conversations. We have been talking to a lot of different people, having conversations with fascinating people, other teachers, people we admire, our students, and we wanted to share them with you. Because at the end of the day, that is the goal, right? Having conversations with cool people. Welcome to English no Cru Conversations. So the first part of this series about conversations is with Shayna from Espresso English. And I am really, really excited about these conversations because Shayna is, well, she is just awesome. Not only is she a very popular and qualified English teacher, but she also has very deep connections with Brazil. So in these conversations, you will learn more about Shayna's story, learn some really, really great and important tips for improving your speaking and pronunciation, and Shayna even provided an amazing list of the 100 most common mistakes that Brazilians make when learning English. So we have some really great conversations. I'm excited to share them with you. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. So this series is all about conversations. And as you probably know, having conversations with native speakers is one of the most important things you can do to improve your English today. And with Cambly, having conversations with professional native teachers has never been easier. Literally, with the click of a button, you can talk to a native teacher from anywhere in the world, whenever you want, wherever you want. And the best part is, and the coolest thing is, Cambly and English no Cru are giving you your first English class for free. It is an amazing deal. You should really, really take advantage of it. To get your first class for free, all you have to do is visit Cambly.com or download the Cambly app on your iPhone or Android, and then enter the promo code English no Cru. It's that simple. Just go to Cambly, use the promotional code English no Cru. Start having more conversations today. Okay, let's get on with the show. Shayna, one thing I really wanted to ask you is we talk about a lot of different subjects regarding English on the show, but we focus specifically on pronunciation in our courses. And that was kind of a deliberate decision on my part to really learn about something and just focus on one aspect of the language. It seems like you're the total opposite, that you have courses on everything, you teach everything, you seem like you're an expert on everything. How did that happen?
Well, it actually started with just one area. As I was building Espresso English and getting more and more people subscribing to my email lessons, not just Brazilians, people were starting to find the website from all over the world. I decided to make a course. But first, I actually decided to ask my subscribers what course they would prefer. So I had three ideas at the time. I had business English, idioms and informal expressions, and phrasal verbs. And so I basically emailed everybody. I presented these three options and I asked people to vote. And I was almost sure that everybody would vote for idioms and informal expressions because those are some of the most difficult things to learn in English. But to my surprise, almost everybody wanted business
Mm.
English. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll make a business English course. And so I did. And then after that, I said, okay, well, these other ideas were still pretty strong, even though they didn't get the majority. So let's make an idioms course. And then I just kept on kind of corresponding with my students and those who had taken my courses and those who hadn't yet signed up for a course, and asking them, what would you like to learn? What would you like to improve? What would you like to focus on? And one by one, that's how I ended up building courses on almost every skill area of the language. So speaking, listening, grammar, phrasal verbs, pronunciation, collocations. I can't even list them all, but there are 15 of them.
Wow, that's very impressive and so smart. For me, I essentially just taught English privately for years and years, and I noticed that a lot of my students were struggling with the same thing. So then I just ran away for like 6 months and created a course on pronunciation without asking them their opinion.
But I do think that
Much better approach that you're
pronunciation
taking.
is really key, because one thing I tell my students is most native speakers will not notice tiny grammar mistakes. And if you use the wrong vocabulary word, sometimes it's a problem, but other times, you can still be understood. If you have bad pronunciation, then no matter how advanced your grammar is or how much vocabulary you know, nobody will understand you. Or you'll have to be repeating stuff a lot. And unfortunately, it also gives people a bad impression of your English. So you might actually have a high level, like a C1 or B2, C1, upper intermediate, advanced level of English on paper.
Mhm.
But when you open your mouth, if your pronunciation is not clear, then people are going to say, oh, they're probably a beginner, or they're probably just pre-intermediate. It just gives the wrong impression. And I also am fond of telling people that your pronunciation does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be identical to an American, but it does have to be clear and understandable. So I still have an accent when I speak Portuguese, but it's my Portuguese is clear and understandable so that Brazilians can understand me. So the same thing with English. You don't have to be exactly like an American or exactly like someone from England if you're studying British English, but it just has to be clear enough, even if there's a small accent, that you can be understood, and you don't have people looking at you like, I don't think their English is that good just because of the pronunciation.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. I always try to make the difference between kind
Yes.
of accent and then mispronunciation. Like if you say a word, but you don't say it exactly how I would say it as an American born and raised in South Carolina, that is totally fine. But if you just say like zappy zappy instead of WhatsApp, you're probably going to have some
Right,
problems
exactly.
speaking to a normal English speaker. Most native English speakers are very generous with grammar mistakes. For example, if you say, I get in the
Hmm.
bus instead of I'm getting on the bus, no one is really going to judge you for that. But I think accent discrimination is a real thing, and I see it a lot, and it's unfortunate.
Yep.
But
But I will say, though, that, and I'm sure you believe this too, with training and practice and orientation, it is absolutely possible to get better at pronunciation. I had a student who was probably in his mid 40s, and he actually had a speech impediment in Portuguese. So he had some problems just even in his native language with pronunciation because of issues with his speech. And he said, he came to me, he said,
mhm.
I have problems pronouncing even in my native language. I don't think I can really pronounce English. I said, well, let's see. Well, to be honest, when we started working together, his English was almost unintelligible, impossible to understand. I could not understand a single word, but we worked on it slowly, and I got him to pronounce things in an exaggerated way, making sure everything was correct and clear. And then I got him to speed it up. And by the time we were done working together, his English wasn't perfect, but it was understandable. And so he went from someone who literally would not be understood at all in English to someone who would be able to communicate. And he had an English speaking manager at the time. And he said, I am able to work with my manager now in English. And so that was definitely great to see. So if he could do it, anyone with enough practice and dedication. And when you practice pronunciation, you have to actually do it, right? You can't just kind of study it on the paper. You have to be repeating and saying the words in order to improve them.
Yes, and that ability to be understood is like in the example you just gave, that is literally life changing. Like that will give you so much more confidence. And that's actually kind of how Alexia and I got started. We both, when we were kids, we both had a lisp, which would be língua presa in Portuguese. And so we both went to speech therapists to have that fixed. And when you're learning a foreign language, it's kind of the same thing. Like there's a sound you can't produce.
Yep, definitely. And think about, yeah, think about like when someone is learning any new skill, either an athlete with a sport or someone learning how to draw or paint. Think about how many exercises that person has to do in order to master it. So it's not something that from today until next week, you're going to instantly be able to make a perfect TH sound or instantly uh, sound like an American. But over time, with that practice and guidance from a course or from a teacher, you absolutely can get a great English accent or very clear pronunciation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally possible. So, Shayna, I know you've taught a lot of students from all over the world, but especially a lot of experience with Brazilians. Do you have any like really common trends or mistakes that you see that everyone is making with?
Yeah, so I've got three that I wanted to share with your listeners. And actually, these are not pronunciation mistakes, these are vocabulary or word usage mistakes. And I know we said earlier that these are actually maybe a little bit less important because you can still be understood. However, if we can fix them, let's fix them, right? So that students sound more natural. So,
Yeah,
one
well,
of them has to do with the idea of, let's say you want to say a sentence like, Eu gostaria de conhecer a Espanha. I would like to, and a lot of Brazilians say, I would like to know Spain. So they translate conhecer as know. But when we're talking about going to a country or going to a new place, in English, we typically say visit. I would like to visit Spain or go to. I would like to go to Spain. We don't really use know in terms of visiting a place for the first time like we would in Portuguese.
I see that every day. One of the most common questions that I receive in my first
Yes.
class with a student is, "Oh, do you know Brazil?" Or "I wanted to take classes with you because you know Brazil."
Exactly. So for the first time, you visit a place or you go to a place. Now, we can use know a place if you know it very well. So since I lived in Salvador for 7 years, I can say, I know Salvador very well because that's something where I know it in depth. It's not a first time visit. I know the city of Salvador. I know how to get around by bus. I know where the supermarkets are. So that's a situation where we can use know with a place. Now it's different for people, right? Conhecer uma pessoa.
Exactly.
Uh, for the first time, we would use the verb meet. So I'll also see students saying, I knew him 7 years ago when they want to say, I met him 7 years ago. That's I met him for the first time 7 years ago. So when you meet someone for the first time,
Exactly.
we translate conhecer as meet or met in the past. And if you want to get to know someone better, conhecer alguém melhor, then we often use the expression get to know. So, quero conhecer ela melhor. I want to get to know her better. It's kind of an informal phrase, get to know someone, but it refers to talking with the person, exchanging ideas, maybe building a bit of a friendship. Yeah, get to know someone better.
Yeah, get to know. That's a great phrase to kind of
Exactly.
you're cultivating the
Second
relationship. Yeah.
small mistake
Yep.
is when talking about your college studies. A lot of Brazilians will say something like, I'm graduated in biology or
Whew.
I'm formed in biology. They're trying to translate the word formado or graduado. So in English, we typically say something like, I
Yes.
have a degree in biology, or even better, I majored in biology. The word major refers to your concentration of studies in college. So instead of translating those words graduated or formed. I have a degree in, or I majored in.
Yes. This is something I see all the time, and I think one of the most difficult things to talk about, also for me in Portuguese, is talking about your educational
Yes. So
background.
what is called graduação in Brazil is what we would call undergraduate studies. That's your basic 4 year degree, or you can also call that a bachelor's degree. They call that
Sometimes we just say undergrad
undergrad. Exactly.
to make it even more complicated. Yeah.
Yep, we shorten the word. And then you have pós-graduação, which for us, postgraduate work is anything after that 4 year degree. So that would be a master's degree or a doctorate. Um, but it is a bit confusing since, yeah, like you said, the systems aren't perfectly aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, I tell my students if talking about education, and a lot of my students work in academics, I always recommend keeping it simple. Like I have a bachelor's degree or I have a degree in, that will be a great place to just start the conversation and get the ball rolling rather than saying like I
Yes.
have a post degree in and then a concentration in.
Totally. The third thing, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, is when Brazilians say, "I like to go to the shopping." Um, so the word shopping has been brought from English into Portuguese to refer to shopping center, what we usually call in English the mall. So I often tell people I like to go to the mall. We don't even really use shopping center that much in English. Like you'll see it in names, right? Central Park Shopping Center, but people don't say I like to go to the shopping center. People say let's go to the mall.
Exactly. I literally don't think I have ever said shopping center in that context in my life as a native English speaker.
Right? And so it's especially confusing because the word shopping is English and it's used in Portuguese in a different way. But in a native English speaker would say the mall. If we say go shopping, now that's different, right? Go to the shopping is not correct, but go shopping, that's correct to talk about the activity of shopping. And that could be
Exactly.
shopping for food, that could be shopping for clothes, that could be shopping for household items. So you can say, I went shopping last Friday. That's perfectly fine, but avoid saying the shopping, go to the shopping. That's just a direct translation from Portuguese to English, and it doesn't sound natural, right?
Right. I think that's excellent advice, and this is something that can be very problematic in a lot of different cases where Brazilians have borrowed English words. One that always confuses me where I don't understand where it came from or why Brazilians say it, but the word outdoor for billboard. So I
Yes.
hear this all the time. Is like I saw an outdoors for this business and I'm like, "Yeah, who created that? Who said that first? That does not make any sense for us at all."
I mean, I guess it must have come from outdoor advertising, maybe, and then just got shortened to outdoor. I can see the connection, but you're right. That's another borrowed word where it's completely different in English. It's billboard.
Yeah, yeah. One I'm seeing a lot recently is home office. So students that work remotely or work from home, they just say, "I work home office."
Ah.
I mean, would be understandable, I think,
Hmm.
but that's definitely not the way we would say it. I think we would say, "I work from home," or "I work remotely," or "I work from my office at home," but
Hmm.
definitely not, "I work from home office," or "I work home office."
Yes. Yep. That's another good one.
So, Shayna, I know that you are a busy person, not only teaching English to a good percentage of the population of the world, but also as a mom. So, I don't want to take up too much of your time. But do you have any, I don't know, any recommendations or things that you would like to add, words of wisdom for our listeners?
Sure. So, we just briefly touched on a few common mistakes today, but I actually, when I was teaching in classrooms, I made a list of all the mistakes my students were making and kind of how to correct them. And I made a little ebook that's basically about 100 of the most common errors that Brazilian students tend to make and how to fix them. I actually wrote it in Portuguese. So if anyone's concerned about not understanding, it's written in Portuguese. Pardon any mistakes. But I'd love to make that available as a free download for your listeners.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So if they go to espressoenglish.net/erros, ERROS, then they can find that download, and I'll send you a link to this page as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes, and that will be easy for everyone to find. That is super helpful because I have wanted to for so long just somehow export all of my Skype messages and run some sort of analysis to find the most common mistakes. But it seems like you've already done that for me. So I really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Yeah, and a lot of these are just small things. I would also encourage people not to, again, not to get too negative about your errors or be like, oh, I'm making 75 of the most 100 most common errors. It's not to make you feel bad about your English. The goal is, of course, to make these small changes to correct and improve your English so that you can say these things confidently and not be like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm using this word right. But you can be like, no, I know that I'm using this word right because I'm aware of the potential error and I know I'm saying it correctly. So the goal is really to build your confidence, not to make you feel bad about mistakes, because mistakes are natural, right? Learning anything, especially language, you're going to make mistakes. So don't let your mistakes get you down, but try to, one by one, learn how to say it correctly.
Yeah, yeah. Mistakes are fundamental to learning. They're the most important part. You have to make them. You have to learn to embrace them and love them. That's part of it. So, Shayna, I completely understand why so many students love you because you explain things in an extremely simple way. I tend to talk a lot. You're very clear, concise, simple, and really positive. So I know everyone appreciates that, myself included.
Thank you. That's what I try to do in my lessons.
That's great. That's great. So, Shayna, where can our listeners find you? Because I know people will be interested in checking out the ebook, but also other courses that you offer.
Sure. So my main website is espressoenglish.net. That's espresso with an S, not with an X. That's a common mistake that actually a lot of native English speakers make as well. And you can
Hmm.
also find me very easily on YouTube if you search for Espresso English. I've got a lot of free videos, free tips, and you can kind of check out my teaching, hopefully learn a few things. And if you're interested, then sign up for my email tips or join me for a course.
Yes, yes, please do. And I really recommend to all our listeners because Shayna has a wealth of information, just tons of great content. Pretty much any question that all of my students have, you have answered it somewhere on the internet already.
I doubt that. There are plenty of questions that I have yet to answer. So keep those questions coming because they make for good ideas for lessons.
Awesome. Exactly. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Shayna. It was a pleasure and a real delight to have you on the show, and I hope to have you back sometime.
Great, Foster. Thanks a lot.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Inglês no Curraju. We will be back to our normal episodes with Alexia sooner than later. Until then, we really, really recommend that you start having more conversations. Start speaking more, and if you're really serious about taking your English to the next level, come and join us, participate in Sound School. Now is the time to do it. And of course, if you want to support the show, please leave us a rating and review, tell your friends about the show, spread the word. We will see you guys tomorrow. As always, keep up the good fight and lose well. Lose well.